The public persona of Princess Diana was a meticulously crafted image that masked a profound internal struggle within the British royal family. To the world, she appeared as a radiant beacon of hope and a fashion icon who transcended traditional monarchy boundaries. However, behind the glamorous gowns and the charming smiles lay a woman grappling with intense feelings of isolation and inadequacy. This psychological mask was not merely a choice, but a survival mechanism developed to navigate the rigid structures of royalty. She mastered the art of appearing composed, even when her personal life was collapsing under the weight of public scrutiny and marital distress. Every public appearance was a performance, where she projected strength while hiding a fragile heart that yearned for authentic human connection. The People's Princess was a title she earned through empathy, yet she often felt like a stranger in her own palace. Understanding her mask requires looking past the camera lens to the silent battles she fought every single day. Her story remains a chilling example of how society demands perfection from icons, while ignoring their private cries for help. Beneath the surface of her royal duties, Diana struggled with the psychological phenomenon of masking to hide her battle with bulimia and depression. This eating disorder was a physical manifestation of the lack of control she felt over her own destiny and surroundings. She used her public engagements as a distraction, channeling her pain into humanitarian work that touched millions of lives worldwide. The contrast between her internal turmoil and her outward grace created a psychological dissonance that few could truly comprehend. At the time, she often spoke of feeling like a product on a shelf, valued more for her image than her complex emotional reality. Her vulnerability was her greatest weapon. Yet, it was also the source of her most significant private suffering and loneliness. The royal institution expected a silent, obedient figure, but Diana's spirit was far too expansive to be contained by such limitations. By wearing the mask of the perfect princess, she protected herself from the coldness she perceived within the palace walls. It was only through her later, more candid interviews that the world began to see the cracks in that polished exterior. This duality between the icon and the individual defines the enduring mystery of her short but incredibly impactful life. The concept of the quiet rebel perfectly encapsulates how Diana used her mask to subtly challenge the status quo of the monarchy. She understood that her image was her currency, and she spent it wisely to advocate for causes that were often considered taboo. Whether it was touching an AIDS patient or walking through a minefield, she used her visibility to humanize the marginalized. These actions were a form of psychological liberation for her, allowing her to step outside the restrictive role of a traditional royal. Even as she broke protocols, she maintained a level of poise that made her defiance look like a natural evolution of grace. Her ability to connect with the common man was a direct result of her own experiences with emotional neglect and sadness. She didn't just sympathize with the suffering, she mirrored it, because she knew exactly how it felt to be overlooked. This mirroring technique allowed her to build an unbreakable bond with the global public that persists even decades after her death. However, the more she gave to the world, the more depleted she felt within the confines of her private life. Her mask allowed her to be everyone's savior, while she remained, in many ways, her own most neglected patient. As her marriage to Prince Charles disintegrated, the mask of the happy wife became an unbearable weight that eventually had to be discarded. The psychological pressure of maintaining a facade of domestic bliss while facing infidelity and emotional coldness was immense and damaging. Diana's transition from a shy teenager to a confident, outspoken woman was marked by her decision to speak her own truth. When she finally removed the mask during her famous tell-all interviews, she shattered the illusion of the fairytale wedding forever. This act of bravery was also a strategic move to reclaim her narrative from a media machine that sought to define her. She chose to expose her flaws and her pain, making her more relatable to the public than any royal before her. The fallout from this transparency was a mix of public adoration and institutional backlash that further isolated her from the establishment. Yet, in that vulnerability, she found a different kind of power that didn't rely on titles or crowns for its legitimacy. She proved that a broken art could still be a powerful force for change if it was shared with honesty. Her legacy shifted from being a tragic figure to a woman who chose authenticity over the safety of a comfortable lie. The media's role in shaping and then hunting the mask of Diana created a toxic cycle of psychological surveillance, an intense public obsession. The paparazzi were not just observers, they were active participants in the construction and eventual destruction of her private sanctuary. Every gesture was analyzed for hidden meaning, forcing Diana to become a master of nonverbal communication and strategic public positioning. She learned to use the camera as much as it used her, often leaking stories to tip the scales in her favor. This cat and mouse game with the press took a heavy toll on her mental health and sense of personal security. She lived in a goldfish bowl where the boundary between the private self and the public persona was almost entirely erased. The constant flashbulbs were a reminder that she was never truly alone, even in her most intimate moments of grief. This lack of privacy forced her to keep the mask on, even when she was exhausted and desperately needed to retreat. The irony is that the more the world tried to see the real Diana, the more she had to hide to survive. Her tragic end in Paris was the final, devastating consequence of a world that refused to let an icon simply be a human being. Today, the psychological legacy of Princess Diana serves as a masterclass in the complexities of fame, identity, and the human spirit. We look back at her life not just as a royal history, but as a study of how one woman navigated extreme pressure, her ability to turn her pain into a platform for empathy. Her most significant contribution to the modern era of celebrity, she taught us that even those who seem to have everything can feel an emptiness that no amount of gold can fill. The mask she wore is a reminder that everyone we meet is fighting a battle we know nothing about behind closed doors. Her story encourages a deeper look at the mental health struggles that often hide behind a successful or perfect public image. By analyzing the mind cipher of Diana, we learn the importance of authenticity in an increasingly superficial and digital world. She was a pioneer of emotional intelligence, using her heart to lead when the world told her to use only her head. Although she is gone, the lessons from her life continue to resonate with anyone who has ever felt like an outsider. Princess Diana will forever be remembered as the woman who broke the royal mold to show us the power of the soul.